And my next guest coming up, his name is the same name as mine. The only difference is he spells his with a K, and I spell mine with a C. And my authors, I tell you, I really am thrilled because the authors that I've been having have not only appeared here with me on the Reading Circle, but they've been on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, Coast to Coast, Sirius XM, Clear Channel. The same way I was reading that litany last week with Harrian and Omar. Well, my next guest has that same litany. His name is Marc Anthony, Markanthony, the psychic lawyer. Now that's a combination for you there, boy. Psychic and lawyer. And we're going to meet with him. He's going to be calling in about 5 minutes or so, and we'll be interviewing him in the second hour of the Reading Circle doubleheader. So again, get on all your social media sites and make sure you let someone know that the Reading Circle is indeed on the air.
Welcome to the Hip Hop Shop.
Hip Hop Shop. Let's break it down for him.
I'm DJ Nick Visco.
And I'm DJ Tone Dog.
And at the Hip Hop Shop, we're here to bring you hip hop news,
interviews,
freestyles,
written,
new and old music from the 80s,
90s,
2000s,
and 2010s.
Keep it locked right here on WPSC 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio on Tuesday nights from 9 to 11 p.m.
You're not going to want to miss this.
I started going cold turkey. Well, at least when I'm in the car.
I know I shouldn't do it, but it's so hard to stop. That's why I hide it from myself, so I won't be tempted.
I used to do it all the time. I stopped by locking it in my glove compartment.
My friend used to do it way too much. Now I turn it off when we're in the car.
My solution is simple. I just don't do it.
There are lots of ways to stop yourself and others from texting and driving. How will you stop? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hey, what's up? Thinking about you. XOXOXO. Want to snuggle. ... JK. Hit me back. You getting these texts? ? We should hang later. I miss you. Holla at ya, boy. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you at home? Where are you? What are you doing? OMG. You are making me mad. Are you with your ex? You better text me back. I'm waiting outside your house.
Relentless, aggressive texting is like sending an angry robot to deliver your message. When does the robot become dangerous? Let us know at that'snotcool.com.
That'snotcool.com.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
All right, welcome back to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. This morning is a Reading Circle doubleheader, and we finished up our first hour, and now we're heading into game number 2. If you're a baseball fan, you know doubleheader is a baseball term. Usually that means there are 2 games. Well, I use that same terminology when I have 2 guests. And my second guest this morning in the 7:30 hours I was just sharing with you, we share the same first name, except he spells his with a K and I spell mine with a C. And we almost had the same second name because he's actually Mark Anthony, and my second name or middle name would have been Mark Allen. And so I was almost Marc Anthony Medley, and then my mother and father had some conversation, and I became Mark Allen Medley. But I have with me Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, quote unquote, also known as the psychic attorney, is the author of the bestsellers Evidence of Eternity and Never Letting Go. He is a world-renowned 4th-generation psychic medium who communicates with spirits. Now, this is always something that's fascinated me, so I'm going to have a real good time with this interview. Mark is an Oxford-educated attorney licensed to practice law in Florida, Washington, D.C., and before the United States Supreme Court. In England, he studied mediumship at the prestigious Arthur Findlay College for the advancement of psychic science. Mark is featured regularly on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox Television, and on major talk radio shows such as Coast to Coast AM, Darkness Radio, Sirius XM, and the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. As a psychic medium, paranormal expert, and legal analyst in high-profile murder cases. Wow. He has been featured in the Hollywood Times, the Huffington Post, the New York Post, Publishers Weekly, The Inquisitor, Staten Island Today, OM Times, Infinity Magazine Canada, and Spirituality Today UK. A charismatic, intelligent, and humorous accomplished public speaker, Mark is a headline speaker at conventions, expos, and spiritual organizations such as the Edgar Cayce ARE and universities including Harvard, Brown, and Yale. Mark's best-selling, award-winning, and critically acclaimed book, Never Letting Go, is the definitive guide to healing grief with help from the other side. This compelling page-turner is for anyone coping with the loss of a loved one. Evidence of Eternity is a major bestseller which brings Mark's years of experience, wisdom, and spiritual study together. This groundbreaking and uplifting journey into the afterlife removes fear and superstition surrounding spirit contact. This book is intelligent, entertaining in style, and presents the scientific basis and theories concerning life after death, spirit communication, both human and animal, karma, and reincarnation. Combining his gifts as a psychic medium with his experience as an attorney, well, that is a fascinating combination. Mark Anthony relates to each client on a personal level, and his positive, personable demeanor is an uplifting influence for people coping with the aftermath of a life-threatening, life-changing, or life-ending trauma. Many of his clients have benefited from his insights, and with his guidance have found the inner strength to turn away from drugs, alcohol, and other self-destructive behaviors. Mark's life mission is to use his abilities to assist those suffering with grief caused by the loss of a loved one. You can view video of Mark Anthony's TV appearances and videos of him conducting readings before the audiences. There's a link there on his website. It's media.evidenceofeternity.com. Mark Anthony, welcome to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley.
Mark, it's great to be here, and I'm so excited because I will be in New York City this coming week, and I know your show is broadcast to New York City, the greater New York City, northern New Jersey area, so thank you very much for having me on.
That is correct, and whenever I know when we chatted, and I tell folks all the time, Mark, social media has been an absolute blessing, and when it first came out, the first thing that kind of came out was MySpace for the kids, and I just had no interest in that whatsoever. And when Facebook came right behind it, I thought it was still something for the kids as well. And I didn't pay any attention to it until one day the light bulb went off that from a marketing tool perspective. And from Facebook, I got on all the other social media sites such as LinkedIn and Pinterest and Instagram and on down the line. And I'm sharing all this to say, because of the social media, I've met so many wonderful people such as you. Mark, we linked up on LinkedIn, or one of them, I forget which one. He told me what he was doing, and and I've heard of you. I've heard of your books. I've actually seen you on some of these stations, and we agreed to do the show because, as he said, he's going to be in town next week, this coming weekend, a week from today, actually Friday evening and Saturday, he's going to be in New York. So we set today's show in anticipation of that. And I'm so glad that it's come about because this is an area that I've always been interested in. I mean, I've read many of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross books. I've read other books in terms of life after death. Eben Alexander has been on the show. We talked about his book, Proof of Heaven. There's been other, because this is just, I mean, because people, anytime you start talking death, people clam up. They get real scared.
Well, absolutely. I mean, what is more terrifying than the end of your existence, or what people perceive to be the end of their existence? And I'm glad you mentioned both Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Dr. Eben Alexander. Eben and I were both speakers at the Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach about a year and a half ago at the Afterlife conference. And what the premise of my books, my first book, Never Letting Go, is a guide on the journey through grief, and Evidence of Eternity, which I'll be in New York City, at Edgar Cayce Center both Friday and Saturday of next week, April 8th and 9th. But next Wednesday, at April 6th, I will be conducting a book signing at Columbia University Bookstore. Are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Okay. I don't know, something strange.
Yeah, and I'm going to share a story with you because this.
The spirits are chiming in.
Right, because, and oddly enough, Mark, I had the same crazed experience when Dr. Alexander was on. We started having all kinds of technical issues, and he explained to me that he's used to that because it generally tends to happen when he's doing radio.
Yeah, it's funny because people around me, weird stuff happens, and everyone in the room looks at me, and it's like, hey, I didn't do it. But I will be speaking at Columbia University on Wednesday, April 6th. 6 to 8:30 p.m., and that is a free event open to the public. And then on Friday and Saturday nights at April 8th and 9th at the Edgar Cayce Center in New York. And all of that's available on my website, evidenceofeternity.com.
And, again, for those in the listening audience, whenever I say what we just said in terms of when Dr. Alexander was on there, if you all recall, we had all kinds of and it's happening again. All kinds of strength, just like what's happening now, we had when Dr. Alexander. So if there's any doubt that there is another realm or that the folks are still around us, it comes through loud and clear when I interview someone who works directly in this area, such as what's going on here. I'm hearing these dial tones, and that, for those of you listening, that didn't happen in the last hour. And if you remember the Dr. Alexander interview, we were having all kinds of chaos going on. So don't be surprised. That's where I'm going with anything that may occur over the next hour or so. But Mark, how did you get into this? How did you start? Where did this begin? This passion or desire to learn about this area?
I was born into a family of people with these abilities. There's a reason that you look like your parents. There's a reason that left-handedness runs in some family. There's a reason that some families tend to have a lot of athletes, others have a lot of intellectuals. We know that certain diseases and ailments are genetic. And in Evidence of Eternity, which explains spirit communication on the basis of science, theoretical physics, and human physiology along with evidence, I talk about the genetics related to psychic ability. And there we go again. Hey, do you want me to call back in or something? Maybe we need to...
Sure, we can try it on another extension or another phone. But I'm telling you, I am not surprised at this at all. Because
sometimes though it's as simple as just a bad line.
So that's good. Let's try it. Okay. But I suspect more. But let's try the new line.
Thanks.
There definitely is a spirit realm. There's no doubt in my mind. There is a spirit realm, and we run into some serious wavelength type issues. Whenever I have folks who work in that realm, like I said, when Dr. Alexander was on the line that morning, the systems went haywire. So I'm not surprised that now that Mark Anthony's on the line that we're having a similar experience. Matter of fact, it's like, wow, maybe it's actually acts as confirmation once again. And as Mark said, maybe it's just an issue of a bad line. We'll see. But if you've been listening for any amount of time this morning, you know we were not having trouble with these lines when Sheree was on the line with us.
My name is Diamonds. I am a radio DJ in North Jersey. I broadcast on the frequency of 88.7 FM. I will be on the air every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. when the sun is setting in the sky. If you are out there, if anyone is out there, I can provide music, I can provide entertainment. If there's anybody out there, anybody, please.
Club Melting Pot. Every Saturday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Only on WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio.
Want to expand your horizons? Want to broaden your mind? Well, listen to the only show of its kind. Listen to The Reading Circle.
We bring you what's going on in the world of reading, in the world of books. Sometimes the book may be from 20, 30 years ago, because the thing about books, they are timeless, particularly if there's a good message. And then there are times when we do books that are hot off the press, that were just released.
Listen to The Reading Circle every Saturday morning from 6 a.m.
The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley.
Only on WP 88.7 FM.
All right, we've been able to reconnect with Mark. Mark, where are you calling out of?
Central Florida, and there is a huge front coming over, and we got a lot of electrical storms.
Okay.
So as much as I'd like to say it's the spirits, which it could be that as well. But anyway, we're back. I'm happy to be here, and you were asking me how did I get into this field. Well,
yes.
both my parents had psychic and mediumistic abilities, and it runs in the family for generations. So when I was about 4, I started perceiving spirits. And my parents were cool about it because I had all these quote-unquote invisible friends, which they could see too. So it wasn't looked at, and I wasn't stigmatized or treated badly, because I know a lot of mediums and whose childhood was just hell. And they used to talk to me about it, and they would say, well, just keep it in the family. Don't talk about it outside the family. You can talk about it to us because people will think you're insane. And so as I got older, you kind of tune it out when you're in school, but you can't ever really tune it out. And then as I got older, it intensified. I originally wanted to go into the clergy, Mark. I had actually
that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of us that are tuned into perception of spirits were drawn to a spiritual career, but I felt that it was too confining. Even though I was raised Catholic and I was considering being a Catholic priest, and I was about 13, I was like, yeah. I started having second thoughts. By the time I was 17, I definitely didn't want to do that. And with no aspersions to the Catholic Church.
Absolutely, I know what you mean.
I didn't think, that sacrificing your personal emotional life would be such a great idea.
Right.
And then I thought, well, there's too many rules, so somehow I ended up in law.
Oh, my goodness.
And as an attorney, I've found that evidence is key to everything that you do. I mean, an attorney that doesn't have evidence to back up his or her position is sunk. And so I started working with my mediumship, and I found that evidential mediumship and was most important. Because anyone can say, "Oh, your father's around, he loves you, and he wants you to be happy." But when you start bringing forth their idiosyncrasies, what they look like, habits, I mean, something funny happened the other day I'd like to share with the listeners. I was doing a reading for this lady, great lady, and I always tell people during the session, take notes. Because a lot of people goes, "Oh, I'll remember it." And then like 5 minutes into it, they're like, "Oh, my God," because so much stuff is coming through. And her husband had passed, and his spirit comes in, and I start seeing the 7 dwarves, from the Snow White, and I'm hearing hi-ho, hi-no, which is weird enough as it is. And then Sneezy walks up to me and sneezes at me. And I go, "Does that make any sense to you?" And she said, "Well, my husband had a lot of allergies, so I'm thinking, maybe that's it." Well, when we're done with the reading, we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden she goes, "Oh, my God." I go, "What?" She's looking at her notes, and she said, "That 7 dwarf thing, about a year before my husband died, a group of our friends, we got together for a Halloween party. We dressed up as the 7 dwarves."
Wow.
I go, "And your husband was?" She goes, "Sneezy." and she goes, "And I was bashful." And I'm like, "Really?" But it was hilarious. It was hilarious because it didn't immediately make sense to her. And, I love it when, well, I don't love it, but the people go, "Oh, you're cold reading. You're just making it up." Really, the 7 dwarves?
Right.
Really?
Right. like Rias, the 7 dwarves. I'd really be able to come up with that.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be easier to say, "Oh, you had a puppy." It's like, yeah, well, everyone's had a puppy.
Right.
Even people that don't like dogs at some point in their childhood had a puppy. But the 7 dwarves and Sneezy, so these images and these impressions come to me, and that's why I studied evidential mediumship to understand when these things start appearing. And the funny thing was, Mark, I remember when I was working with these my mentors in England, because the British are very advanced in the fields of psychic science, and I said, "So that's what that is," because whenever I meet people, not always, but about 80% of the time, I start picking up like weird imagery and stuff. Then I realize, oh, those are spirits around them, and it's like this one lady. If you don't mind me telling one more story.
No, because we have until 9 o'clock. If you want to hang out that long, we have that long.
Well, I actually have to go at 8:30 because I was just my dad. It's his birthday today. And,
tell him happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. And we got a whole day planned of stuff. I got my whole family together. But I was doing a reading for this woman, and I started to see an octopus. Now that's even weirder than the 7 dwarves. And I go, octopus. And she says, "Oh, my." And I said, "What?" She said, "Well, her husband had passed. We used to live in Belize, and we lived on a canal. And we had this tank where we'd catch lobsters out of the canal, and we'd put them in this tank. And one morning we came out with our coffee, and an octopus had slithered up out of the canal and was stealing our lobsters." She said, "Do you think that's what he's talking about?"
Wow.
And I said, "Well, unless you have another octopus story, I'm kind of thinking, yeah."
Unless you have you know what? We hit a dead ringer here again. You say, unless there's another one in existence. Is there like a community, like we mentioned names such as Dr. Alexander or either John Edward or Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, or is there like a community of you all, or do you all know each other?
Kind of all the above. I mean, there's organizations, the spiritualist churches throughout the country are kind of like psychic-based, mediumistic-based churches, and then the unity churches are metaphysical Christians,
right?
Where they believe that spiritual and metaphysical gifts and Christ consciousness is a connection with enlightenment and the light. We all kind of know each other, and in my travels across the country, because ever since Never Letting Go was released in 2011, I've pretty much been on tour constantly since then. That's why New York next week at Columbia, and then the Edgar Cayce Center next week. And then in June, I'll be one of the speakers at the Spirit Symposium in Sedona, which is fascinating because we're going to be discussing the afterlife in terms of 21st century science. Near-death experiences, reincarnation, spirit communication, because the team that we have put together, Dr. Gary Schwartz, Dr. Marjorie Wollicott, Dr. Robin Weeks, and myself, we're all experts in the field of afterlife and different aspects of it. Because as people will see in my book, Evidence of Eternity, it's not, and I'm just, making a joke here, it's not an airy-fairy, fluffy, buffy book. I mean, this explains how it happens. The other night I was on Coast to Coast with George Norrie, which you mentioned in the intro, and the topic was quantum consciousness. And what's really fascinating, Mark, and this is something I'm working on for my next book, but I certainly touch upon this in great detail in Evidence of Eternity, is that every great spiritual leader, I mean, we're talking from Krishna through Moses, Buddha, Jesus, Mother Teresa, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., all the great people that were, the ones that got it, all talk about God as light.
Right.
And the near-death experience people all talk about, like Eben Alexander and Raymond Moody, they talk about when your consciousness leaves your body, you perceive light. And Albert Einstein said that we're all beings of light.
Correct.
Well, light is composed, as is everything in the universe, of subatomic particles known as quanta, which are electromagnetically charged.
Right.
Okay, so your table actually is composed of some of the same type of energy that you are. It's just that we vibrate at a higher frequency.
Correct.
Well, in recent years, there's been a discovery by scientists and medical doctors that our individual cells emit light. They call them biophotons. And this is different than the bioluminescence of a firefly or certain creatures which glow at night. This is an ultra-weak photon emission. And so what they're believing now, and there's a science to back it up, is that our body is a grid, a matrix of cells that communicates using flashes of light. So if you drop a bowling ball on your foot, it immediately hurts because it's getting to your brain at light speed. And so if God is perceived as light, then it appears that the light of God is within us.
Right.
And taking this to the next extent, life as we know it could not exist without light. First off, our planet just happens to be the right distance from the sun, so that's not a frozen chunk of ice or a flaming, cinder like Mercury or Venus. And then everything that we eat is dependent on photosynthesis. Whether we're eating vegetables or animals that eat vegetables, light is the basis of everything. So why is it unusual if our bodies actually emit light? So the light that is God, the light is without, within, and part of us energetically interconnected. So when we die, that quantum field of these electromagnetically charged particles in our brain, in our consciousness, lives on in a coherent state. Now, this is not just some fluke theory that New Age people have come up with. We've got scientists from the Max Planck Institute in Germany, from Oxford, University of Arizona, MIT, the Institute in Japan. There's the Russian Institute, and then there's been studies conducted in India, South Africa, Australia, Holland, Israel. I mean, all over the world, quantum physicists, there's a huge section that are saying that we continue on in a quantum state. In other words, there is a scientific basis for the existence of a soul and therefore the afterlife.
It's interesting you were talking about the cells and the quantum and the light and so forth and so on in terms of us vibrating at different frequencies. I was teasing my wife last week about inanimate objects and how they really do. If, let's say, for example, you're in the process of you're looking for a new car and your old car begins to act up, or if you're buying a new toaster oven or whatever, the old toaster. So I was teasing her because a new toaster oven had come in. I said, oh, the old one is going to get jealous and start acting up. And she's, I can have it. I said, oh, yes, it can. Inanimate objects. I honestly have had experiences where inanimate objects act almost as if they're human. Mm-hmm. And what you just said kind of, for me, kind of explains that.
Well, we all vibrate at different levels. It's funny because I have a friend and he's a psychic, and he collects all these different crystals. Oh, this one's good for depression. This one's good for weight loss. This one's good, and it's like, this guy must live in a mine. I mean, he's like always buying all these stones. And what it is, he's so sensitive to frequency, and then different crystals resonate at different levels. And psychic activity, and this is something that I go into in great depth in Evidence of Eternity, I refer to what I do not as mediumship, but as interdimensional communication. And think of it this way. We live in AM radio, okay, which vibrates at various frequencies, and call the other side FM radio. They are two energetic systems, both using waves, amplitude, frequency, and energy. And for the most part, they're separate, although occasionally they they overlap and they intersect. And so that's what I do as a medium, is I'm able to raise my vibrational frequency to a point where spirit lowers his or hers, and we get a frequency match. But the pineal gland in our brain possesses both magnetite and calcite crystals. It generates an electrical field. It controls our circadian rhythms when we get up, when we sleep, and it does all the, secretes melatonin. But it also regulates brainwave frequency. So, Mark, we have a radio station in our heads.
Yes.
And that's why everybody is capable of having a mediumistic experience. I'll bet, Mark, dollars to donuts, you've had a dream at some point in your life, and maybe many points in your life, where a deceased loved one comes and talks to you, and it feels real.
Absolutely. I've had them both. I've had them where they've come and talked, and I've had them where they've said absolutely nothing. But I can see them clear as if they were standing there, and they won't say anything. They'll just come, look, stand, and they'll go back in. But I've also had them where they've talked to me as well. Yes, you're absolutely right. Dollars to donuts, you're correct.
And and that's a visitation. And a visitation is different from a dream, because a dream has all those surrealistic elements. It's like, all of a sudden you see a penguin that turns into, a rock star or something, But in a visitation, it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's coherent. And a lot of times they don't necessarily have to say something. It's you're sensing and feeling their presence. Now, what's going on here is, when we're awake and conscious, we're in the beta state. And this is all what the pineal gland regulates. And we go from beta to our brainwaves change to what's been deemed the alpha state. And then we go from alpha to theta. And it appears on the alpha-theta border is when spiritual, mediumistic psychic activity occurs, because you get this brainwave alteration, which spirits can spot. So that's why they'll come to you in dreams, and they regulate their brainwave frequency, so you get a frequency match. And for some reason, people like me are able to do this voluntarily and in the beta state. Because if you watch me or watch other mediums, it's funny what I hear people say, and then especially I've been on television enough, and I've seen myself. I kind of go through this whole, I can see the look on my face and everything, because while I'm conscious, I'm in the alpha state.
Right.
I call it the groovy baby state, because it feels great. It's this very uplifted, it's this very incredible sensation, and then you get these images, glimpses, and all this. And that's why I'll see things like the Seven Dwarfs or an octopus, or somebody will come through and I'll see things, hear things, feel things. And it's quite a fascinating phenomenon, which is why I study it like a science and explain it, because nothing in the universe just happens.
Correct.
There is an explanation for everything. And if people say it's the power of God, well, yes, it is the power of God, but there is a delivery system for that energetic shift or change, which is explainable. And now what we're seeing are quantum physicists saying that it may be explainable on the basis of the laws of physics.
Wow. You were talking a couple of minutes ago in terms of the various stones. What does that now do for the spirit, or either your rhythms or whatever, if you carry those stones or wear them? Or does it do anything?
I don't know if it does anything, but well, most of the women I know like diamonds, and diamonds are crystals, and they're at a very high frequency because of the nature of what it is. And diamonds can solve a lot of problems. So
oh, yes.
maybe they do a lot more than we think. You were mean to me. Well, here's a tennis bracelet. And it's like, oh, I've seen how a tennis bracelet can solve a lot of conflict.
If you've just joined us, my guest is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, and we're talking about a plethora of things. And we started the conversation. I said, when you start talking death with people, automatically fear goes up. And his book, in terms of evidence of eternity and never letting go, deals with that. And my next question, in terms of when you now are doing a reading or you're speaking with someone who's lost a loved one, by the time they finish talking to you, do they have a better appreciation or less of a fear of, I guess, what we would consider the end?
Generally. There's some people, it depends on your attitude going into the reading. And in all of my materials on my website, evidenceofeternity.com, and in my books, I always recommend that people wait about 6 months, 4 to 6 months after the death to have a reading. The spirit can communicate right away, but even though you may be very desirous, you really want that contact, if you're hysterical with grief,
right,
and you're crying and just going through a lot of intense emotions during the reading, you're not going to get the maximum benefit out of it. Because I know you mentioned Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and she talks about the 5 stages of grief.
Right.
But there's 2 phases of grief, which are shock and trauma. And shock happens right after the death. That's like when you get the news and you get that your chest caves in and you want to vomit, and then it's like you're literally in shock where you're outside of your body, watching what's going on, and you're emotional and angry and just completely out of your mind.
Right.
And shock eventually fades, but then you meld into trauma. And trauma is that unending pain, the remorse, the guilt, all the missing the person. And that's what we have to live with for the rest of our lives. So you really have to get through the shock phase, then some semblance of stability, the new normal that we call it. And the new normal doesn't mean it's great. It's just, this is life without mom, or life without my son, or life without my partner or spouse, whatever. And that's when you will get more benefit out of a reading. And, then there's some people go into readings and they have a really bad attitude, or they're not listening, or they expect it to be like texting and instant messaging, and they don't pay attention, and they tend not to get as much benefit out of it as the people who are open-minded. Like when people come into a reading with a set agenda. I was doing a reading for this lady one time. She goes, well, and about halfway through she said, well, there was something I was supposed to hear from my son. I said, what do you mean? She goes, we had a special code word. What was it? I said, well, I keep seeing his birds. No, that's not it. I go, well, what was it? She goes, a feather. I said, well, aren't birds covered in feathers?
Exactly.
She got it wrong. And she started arguing with me. And I realized that she was just so angry that her son had died.
Right.
That I could have made him materialize in front of her, and she still would have been angry.
Right.
And so what they do is they take it out on me, and I get it. I don't need the love of strangers. Certainly nobody likes to be insulted, especially when I know them. And people go, "You're a fraud." It's like, I'm a member of the United States Supreme Court Bar. They tend to frown on fraud. Okay, So there are some people, and there was a saying that emanated from Bernadette at Lourdes. Bernadette at Lourdes, a lot of the Catholic saints exhibited what we now know to be psychic and mediumistic behavior.
Right.
And in medieval times, if you were a member of the clergy, you were seeing visions of the Holy Spirit. If you were just the girl that milked the cows down the street and started walking around the village going, "I see dead people," well, then they burned you at the stake as a witch. And we've been horribly persecuted, still are. I mean, there are several countries in the Middle East where what I do is punishable by death.
That's correct.
So there's all these backward, primitive, superstitious nonsense that, and that's what I try to do in Evidence of Eternity, is dispel the fear and primitive superstitions that surround spirit communication. It is a gift from God. It is a phenomenon of physics and frequency, and it is available in one form or another to everybody, and there's nothing to be afraid of. But Hollywood, ooh, they like to make this stuff scary. Lamps flying around the room, people's heads spin around,
right.
Because movies like that sell lots of tickets. But the fact of the matter is, for some people with Bernadette of Lourdes, she saw visions of a lady of light. The Catholic Church came in, did an investigation, concluded it was the Virgin Mary. Okay, well, Bernadette never said it was Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Right.
She only referred to her as the Lady of Light. Okay, and that's fine, and you can believe what you want with that, because either way, she had a beautiful vision. But she exhibited what we now know to be psychic activity, and the saying that came out of that is, for those who believe, no proof is necessary. For those who do not, no proof may be possible.
Wow. Now, in terms of, you were talking earlier, a couple of minutes ago, about waiting at least 6 months. Does your ability to communicate with spirit, does it ever have, for lack of a better term, what is that whenever they call term, not term limits, but
expiration date.
Expiration date, or either, I'm trying to, statute of limitations. That, does it have that? Because say, for example, next week, on the 7th, my father will have passed away 31 years. So is it possible to contact someone who's been gone that long, or does it have a statute of limitations or term limit or expiration date or what have you? Or do they go somewhere where they can't be contacted?
No, they can always contact you because the other side is timeless. And when you look at what Einstein, Feynman, Stephen Hawking have been discussing about time, we believe time exists,
right,
because we're born, we grow old, and we die. So we tend to think of time as in a linear fashion. Like you put a dot on a blackboard, and then time moves from left to right in a straight vector.
Right.
Right. Well, it doesn't. It does for us in a perceptual sense because we perceive it to be so. But the reality is that time is timeless, and that the physicists explain that everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen is occurring simultaneously. All right, so let's put that into answering your question. I've communicated with people who've been on the other side since 1912. I was doing a reading for a woman who was doing a genealogy, and I didn't know that she was doing that, and this guy came through, and I saw the Titanic, and I saw the way he was dressed. I said, Titanic looks like 1912. Well, he wasn't on the Titanic, but this guy died in 1912, and she was the great uncle she was trying to find information on, and it came through, like the one or two bits that she needed, which is great because I didn't know that that's what she was looking for, that's what she wanted, because she didn't come at me with an agenda, like, I need a sign, like that, because then they're putting a lot of angst into the and negative energy into the field. Also, what you have to realize is that in a spirit's reckoning, let's say, your father passed 31 years ago. You could live another 50 years. And in his reckoning, you'll be along in a moment or so. Because time is not for them as it is for us. Also, love is energy, and energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. So it doesn't matter if the person passed years and years ago. I mean, I've done readings for people that were in their 70s, and this one lady, this young man came through, and she says, I remember him from high school, and he had a crush on her, and she had a crush on him, but he was killed in a car accident. And it really took her breath away. She goes, I haven't thought about him in years, but you described him to a T. So he came through like 50 years after he died because he wanted to say hello. So there is no shelf life. God has no statute of limitations. And for people out there who want to do something negative today, realize that neither does karma.
Right.
Karma never loses in a trap.
Yes, if you've just joined us, I see what they're talking about with the humor, with the charisma and the humor. A charismatic, intelligent, and humorous, accomplished public speaker. Absolutely. If you just joined us, that's who it is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. He'll be with us for about another 20 minutes or so. I need to do a couple of things, but you know what to do. I've been doing it while he's talking, and that is get on all your social media sites and let folks know that Marc is on the air with me. Fascinating conversation. Like I said, for me, it's always the whole area of death is always, even as a child, death has been fascinating for me in terms of when I always, even as a kid, did not mind going to funerals. And when my father did pass away, Marc had the opportunity to help embalm him. And so that whole, and you were talking about the dreams and everything. I've had friends who've passed away that have come back that have talked to me, and I've talked to them. I've seen my father come back to me in a dream where he didn't say anything, but I saw him, and he just kind of looked and turned around and walked away or what have you. I've had those kind of dreams. So this is an area, and I've read many books on the subject, that's always just been like a high area of interest for me. So to have the opportunity to talk with you, because I see here also in the bio, you've been called in on murder cases, so forth and so on. I want to talk a little bit about that whenever we come back from the information I need to share. So hang on for a couple more minutes. And, I know you have a hard stop at 8:30, so we'll be sure to get you out of here by then. But again, it is Marc Anthony, and we are talking about his books in terms of evidence of eternity and what is the other one? Letting go?
Never
letting go. I had them right in front of me, and then I went off, clicked the computer off to do something else. But again, fascinating stuff. I mean, I think because death is so much about the unknown, that's why it fascinates many of us. And like I said, for others, it just puts the fear of everything in us. So, all right, let me do what I need to do, and then we'll come right back.
WPSC, Wayne, New Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, gobrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey. This is the innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless. They have awesome variety. The kick-ass.
I love Brave New Radio.
The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
Straight from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center, here's your local forecast.
All right now, 49 degrees. I don't know why the temperatures are going the other way, because we're supposedly at some point going to move to a high of 57, but we are now at 49 degrees, rain here in the Wayne, New Jersey area. A steady rain early, then remaining cloudy, 90% chance of rain, so it's raining out there now even though I'm in the studio. 70% chance of rain tonight. Tomorrow, Sunday, 40 as a high, 30 as a low, intermittent snow showers. Wow, 40% chance of that. Partly cloudy skies tomorrow night, Sunday, 50% chance of rain. Then on Monday, cloudy with rain and snow in the morning, changing to all rain in the afternoon. There is 100% chance of precipitation. So we're going to get some precipitation on Monday. 51 is a high, 23 is a low. Tuesday, sunshine, high of 42, low of 23. It's going to clear up. And on Wednesday, 49 as a high, 42 as a low. Intervals of clouds and sunshine, cloudy skies on Wednesday night. That is the weather brought to you right here by the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. Again, my guest in the second hour of the Reading Circle doubleheader is Marc Anthony, the psychic lawyer. He's been on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, Coast to Coast, Sirius XM, Clear Channel, and many others. I'm watching on his website the various videos of him on being various broadcasts, and we are talking about the afterlife. A topic that for many scares the heck out of them, and for some like me, it fascinates the heck out of us. When you've been called in on murder cases and things like that, how does that all work? What are they calling you to do?
I've been consulted by military intelligence on one case and a couple law enforcement on another, just to pick up impressions, any leads, and things that I've transmitted they found very useful. What happens a lot is people who've had loved ones that they're not sure if it was a suicide or a murder or somebody was murdered, and they're looking for additional insights into what happened. And it's I always use the word interesting because I think it's interesting. But approaching those readings, you have to be very, very compassionate and understanding. But I also tell people I don't want to know anything prior to the reading so that my perceptions are not tainted or influenced in any way. So I'll be doing a reading on somebody, and then somebody will come through and I'll start describing them. And generally I will feel how the person died. And, for example, different medical conditions or different causes of death, they have a similar sensation. So I'll say I'm getting like an impact sensation in my head, which could be head trauma, could be an aneurysm, and I'll tell where it was, and I'm tasting blood and this and that. And like one time I was talking to these folks, and I said, I feel like someone's taking their finger and poking me here and here and here and here and here all over me. And I looked up at the clients, and they had this look of horror on their face. I go, what? They go, well, he was stabbed to death multiple times.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, so that would be that. And so that helps people understand things. Like one time I saw like a street highway sign. I saw a watch that the person was last seen wearing. You know, things like that can help the police determine or find probable cause. In other words, a psychic or a medium's intuition is not admissible in court. I mean, could you think of something that's more hearsay than that?
Right, that's absolutely
Okay?
right.
But it can put the police in the right direction so that they can then, it can lead them maybe to that watch or to that street sign because the body could be located around there. Like I saw things in the Casey Anthony case that later when they exhumed her body or found her body made sense with what I was seeing.
Right.
That it can point the police in the right direction to help them obtain evidence, which can then lead to the development of probable cause, which can lead to a valid arrest. So it's part of the process, and a lot of police agencies nationwide are using psychics and mediums unofficially, because they'll say, oh, we don't believe in that. Then they'll say, hey, look, what do you got? So.
Exactly. That's right. Every little bit helps. One of my favorite shows is Forensic Files and Snapped. And a lot of times they introduce psychics or whatever they need, like you said, to lead them to whatever they need. In terms of now being an attorney or a lawyer, how does what you're able to do in terms of the spirit realm help you in terms of if you're preparing a case or if you're working on a case or anything in that area?
It gives me insights into people and situations. I mean, it's funny. It's like people think they're being clever on Facebook. They go, psychic lawyer, I bet he knows which cases he's going to win. It's like, ha, never heard that one before. You know, and it's like, folks out there listening, next time you want to write something stupid or sarcastic on Facebook, don't. It's like what all the religions teach you,
right.
Be nice. Okay, the next time you want to do something mean, don't. What it is, it gives me insights into people, and in both my books, Never Letting Go and Evidence of Eternity, I talk about how it has helped me in Never Letting Go. I talk about when I was selecting a jury one time, there was this one woman I kept getting drawn to, and I kept feeling a female presence around her and this tightening around my throat. And the case I was working on, it was mutual combat. It was this kind of rednecky guy got into a barroom brawl with another rednecky guy. So it was two big bruisers who went at it.
Right.
And the loser filed the charges against the other guy. So it was a crime of violence. And so this one juror, and I just refer to her as juror number 9 in the book. I said, have you or has anyone in your family ever been the victim of a violent crime? And this is on jury selection, which is before the trial actually begins. And the purpose of jury selection is to ask prospective jurors on the panel questions to see if they have any biases or prejudices against your client. And I get this female spirit around her. I get this tightening around my throat, and this woman looks up to me when I said, I asked her, did you or anyone in your family been a victim of violent crime? And all of a sudden the tears just started streaming. She was this beautiful Latino woman, and she said, my sister was in a foreign country last year when an escaped mental patient strangled her and dismembered her.
Wow.
Ooh. And I'm standing there, and like everyone in court's looking at me like, do something, and all I'm thinking is, God, in law school they didn't teach me how to deal with this.
Absolutely.
And what was happening is her sister was then really coming forward really, really strong, and I could see my client, all I could hear is, dude, what are you doing? Like that. And if people want to find out, they're going to have to read Never Letting Go.
I'm looking here at your frequently asked questions. And the first one right off the bat is, what is the difference between a psychic and a medium?
A psychic tunes into the energy of a person, place, or thing. So if you want to find out about like health status, love life, career, you want to go with a psychic. If you want to communicate with loved ones who have passed, you want to talk to a medium. Now, there's different types of psychics, like there's different types of doctors and lawyers, and they refer to me as a psychic medium. All mediums have psychic abilities, but not all psychics are capable of mediumistic ability. That's why some psychics are extremely intuitive, and they'll just knock your socks off by telling you about what's going on with you and what's coming up, because it's like they're tuning into a different radio station on the FM dial.
Right.
Let's say that psychics tune into 101.3 and mediums tune into 104.7. Okay? And so a lot of people come to me and they want me to do, fortune-telling type readings and future events, and that's not what I do. I'm for communicating with the other side. That doesn't mean I can't pick up on future events, but I put my focus into spirit communication because I think that is the greater goal. A lot of people come and say, will I find true love? And I'm looking at them, and they're sitting eating a box of Oreos. And it's like, well, what are you doing about finding someone? Nothing. It's like, well, put down the box of Oreos.
Yes.
Join a gym. Go
That's
to social
right.
events, maybe go to your church. Go to a church, meet some other people in your age group. Put yourself out there.
Right.
And try to find somebody decent. Just don't sit home alone thinking all of a sudden there's going to be a knock on the door and it's Prince Harry.
Right.
Hey, I heard about you, and I'm going to sweep you off your feet, There's a reason they call those fairy tales,
Absolutely. So if you're sitting on the train or the bus or the plane or whatever, you can actually see spirits around people?
At times. I turn it on and turn it off because you don't really want to be bombarded constantly. It would drive you nuts.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you don't leave your windows and doors of your home unlocked with a sign, come on in anytime, and you don't want to do that to psychically. I mean, it doesn't mean that a persistent spirit won't come up and start banging on my head, but they also know when I'm doing it and when I'm not doing it because, I do have a life.
Absolutely. Because it's what I'm hearing from you, it sounds like you have access to that ability. It's not like you have to, like you said, you're not just going to be walking around all day channeling.
Right,
you have access to right. And that's what people need to understand. That I'm quite sure, just as they joke with you on Facebook, I'm quite sure there are folks that whenever you tell folks or they learn of what you do, that's probably what they think, that you're just walking around channeling all day.
Well, yeah, I mean, recently, a couple months back, I had to get a root canal, which, anyone that's had a root canal knows that is not a pleasant thing. And so I walk out and I go to pay, the copay on my bill, and I'm all swollen and all this. And the girl behind the counter, she goes, "Is there somebody around me?" And I looked at her and go, "Sweetheart, I had a hole drilled in my head. All I want to do is go home and take this prescription and lie down." It's like, so also, for people who do know psychics or mediums, please don't go up to and start these on-demand readings. And also for psychics and mediums, there's a lot of TV shows based on this, which I find very unethical. You just don't go up and fling a reading at somebody who's in the grocery store picking out which head of broccoli to buy, because they're in the grocery store to pick out broccoli, not to suddenly deal with the death of a loved one.
Right.
And plus, with TV shows that do that, people have to realize it's scripted.
Right.
You get 5 different camera angles with close-ups and perfect sound, perfect makeup, perfect lighting, and realize that everybody that's in the background whose face isn't blurred out had to sign a release. It takes about 5 to 6 hours to film that 90-second sequence. So there's nothing real about that. The real ones are like people like me that are on television talk shows, and I'm doing reading for audience members, or when you're sitting across from somebody and it's in a one-on-one setting, and maybe a 3-camera shoot, and then they edit it down from an hour, because there's a lot of times when the client's sitting there staring at you going, and of course with television you can't have that. You've got to edit it down to a 2 or 3 minute segment. You have all the wow moments in there, as opposed to the I don't know, don't remember, 7 dwarves doesn't make any sense to me. And then later on they'll say, hey, yeah, we dressed up as the 7 dwarves for Halloween. Because that's not unusual, because people get overwhelmed and they're not making the connections.
The reason this is and I love to laugh because I just see the humor in just about everything. There's very few situations I can't find something.
Mark, you can't take life too seriously because you never get out of it alive.
And this is true, but each industry, if you will, has their own things that you just look at each other and say, you can't make this stuff up. or either, you know what, if I were to write a book about all the crazy experience. And so I'm listening to you now as people know what you do and the various experiences you have. And they really are, when you listen to them, they are funny, because it's what people already, they are confused about that area to begin with. And they're making certain assumptions. And just the fact that they come at you the way they do and the way you're sharing the story is comical to me. It really is.
Oh yeah, I mean, it can be hysterically funny at times. And the fact of the matter is, when a spirit comes from the other side, what people need to realize is the other side's a collective consciousness. Nobody over there is alone. They're not sad. I've yet to meet a spirit goes, boo-hoo, I'm dead. They're in this purely energetic state. Energy doesn't get old. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't get sick. And they're always in this higher vibration. We're the ones who are suffering.
Right.
And they understand that because they remember and know what it's like to be in our form. And when they come across from the other side, even though they're no longer angry or bitter or jealous or whatever hang-ups or issues that they had in the material world, they bring the residual memories of those to transmit personality traits. Okay, I'm doing a reading for this husband and wife, and their son comes through. And
following areas in New Jersey: Sussex, Warren, Morris, Hunter and Somerset, Middlesex, Western Monmouth and Eastern Monmouth. High wind warning in effect from midnight to noon Sunday. The National Weather Service in Mount Holly has issued high wind warning, which is in effect from midnight to noon Sunday. The high wind watch is no longer in effect. Winds west to northwest at 25 to 35 miles per hour with gusts up to 60 miles per hour. Timing: a rapid increase in the winds is expected overnight and continuing Sunday, with the strongest winds occurring Sunday morning. The winds are then expected to diminish quickly late Sunday afternoon and especially Sunday evening. Impacts: downed trees and power lines, potentially resulting in power outages. Some damage is possible to building structures. Difficult driving conditions, especially for high-profile vehicles on north-south roads due to crosswinds, and also on bridges and other elevated roadways. A high wind warning means a hazardous high wind event is expected. Sustained wind speeds of at least 40 miles per hour or gusts of 58 miles per hour or more can lead to property damage. Secure or store away any items that can be blown around by the strong winds.
Her husband loved her. He brought his personality, his sense of humor with her, and it brightened her day. And that's when I'm doing my job.
Well, I tell you, and I know my mom's listening. She sent me a text. I remember my grandmother had a near-death experience, and I remember my mother sharing with us that when my grandmother came back to, she asked the question, "Why did you all bring me back?" Because it was so beautiful there. And it sounds like this experience that you're describing, that you get there and it's what we realize here, it's not what's realized there. And that's kind of like what she was saying, like, you all should have left me there. Why did you bring me back? And I would think and that's why I asked the question earlier, but particularly for somebody who's grieving, that once they hear that there really is no end, I would think that would be some comfort.
Yes. It is, because if we look at what every great spiritual teacher has taught us, is that the soul pre-exists the body, comes into the body, and then moves on. The laws of physics: energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred from one form to another. Quantum physicists are now saying that the quantum field, the energy that creates your consciousness, a.k.a. your soul, continues on after your body no longer exists and then can reattach to another body, meaning there may be a scientific basis now for reincarnation as well, which is why people like myself, we don't believe in the archetypal hell with the guy running around sticking it with a pitchfork, but there is reincarnation. That's why I tell people, karma doesn't lose an address.
Right.
Okay, and coming back, the objective is to not have to come back to this earthly plane so that you can exist in that beautiful, energetic state free of pain and angst. So perhaps hell is a temporary state, but hell can, quote-unquote, last a lifetime.
Right. And I know we're now down to the last one that you have to run, and I always give my guests the opportunity to promote. And I know we started earlier in the show about your show coming up in New York next weekend, but this is your opportunity. You can say anything with the exception of a dollar amount, but in terms of addresses...
well, I understand that. Well, I've got my tour. I would encourage the listeners to go to my website, evidenceofeternity.com, just like my book, Evidence of Eternity. And you can find about my New York City events at Columbia University and the Edgar Cayce Center next week. In June, in Sedona, Arizona, I'm one of the speakers at the Sedona Spirit Symposium from June 9th through 11th. On my site, there's a pink banner, beautiful pictures of Sedona. Click on that. And then in October, I've got coming up the Psychic Explorer, Mark Anthony Mystical Mayan Cruise, and it's going to be aboard the Royal Princess, one of Princess Cruises' most beautiful ships. They're one of their brand new ships, and it leaves from Fort Lauderdale to the Cozumel on the Costa Maya.
Wow!
And and at the Sea Days, I'll be giving a discussion on the Mayan culture, and then doing gallery readings where I'll be connecting random audience members with loved ones in spirit. So then we'll be down in Costa Maya, and then on the Sea Day on the way back, I will be also giving a talk on the science of spirit communication and do another gallery reading where I'll be connecting attendees. We're getting a lot of people signing up for that, and so that's a real exciting event. I've got Lilydale, New York, which is near Buffalo at the end of July. I've got a lot of events coming up this year. I'm just giving you the highlights. Looks like I'll be back in L.A. in September. And, of course, New York City. Can't wait to be there and see all my friends up in New York. So everything can be found on my website, evidenceofeternity.com. You can also book a reading with me. Most of my readings are over the phone. And, Mark, I look forward to meeting you in New York. I cannot thank you enough for having me on your show.
Well, same here. I can't thank you for taking the time to appear. And, yeah, like I said, I believe for me it'll probably be Friday evening. Saturday works it, but I think Friday evening
just let us know. Yeah, just let us know. We look forward to seeing you. And to all your listeners, my books, Never Letting Go, are for those who are suffering with the loss of a loved one. Evidence of Eternity is as well, but that will give you the scientific basis for spirit communication, the afterlife, and Evidence of Eternity is actually up for a Pulitzer Prize.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I want to thank you again, Mark, and to all your listeners. Have a great weekend, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Same to you. And you said it's your father's birthday, correct?
Yes, it is.
Tell him happy birthday from all of us.
Yeah, we're taking him on a boat ride adventure tour today, but these thunderstorms may alter our plans,
right.
So I got to come up with a quick plan B.
Well, I tell you what, have a great time. Enjoy your dad and his birthday. And again, we'll be in touch. And like I said, I look forward to meeting you on Friday night as well.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. Same to you. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, this brings us to the end of another exciting reading circle. I'll tell you, each week surpasses the other, and I just find that hard to do because each week is so good.